Well, Dina Nina, it's so great to see you again. Thanks for taking a little bit of time to join the Interfaith Voices podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation since I connected with you, and so excited about everything that you have going on. But I always get a little bit ahead of myself. So let's back up a little bit and give you an opportunity just to introduce yourself in whatever way that you want to.
Oh, thank you, Matt. It's an honor to be here. Um, I am a small business owner, food service worker, currently in Alder here in Madison. Somebody who came from a family of deep faith and uh, someone who remains a person of deep faith. And it kind of informs everything I do and everything about who I am. And so, yeah. Uh, a collectivist, somebody who believes we're responsible for each other, and comedian. I was a comedian for the better part of 20 years.
Wow.
So here we
Okay.
are in politics, just getting material, like packing in the material for the Netflix special in the
Yes,
future.
I'm really gonna look forward to that. I'm really gonna look forward to that. Yeah, it's like so many of us, the road is windy wherever we're going, and so I appreciate, I've read a little bit about your background, and now I know you're in politics, and that's life, and that's what's wonderful about it. And I think if we can have less politicians who are just politicians, I think we're going to have a better a better democracy. So when I saw that you were engaged in running for the 76th Assembly, I was very excited because
Oh,
we don't need more of the same. We need people bringing new progressive ideas, and we need people that are for the people. And I know in the limited time that I've known you, I know that's who you are. You don't have to guess about that. And we've only met in person one time, and it was so obvious. So share a little bit again, share a little bit about how you get to comedian, leadership development, small business owner, and then one day you decide like politics, that makes so much sense for me.
if anybody does that, but I spent so much time trying to build a career that I had some really good success and got really close to the sun quite a few times. And then after the 2020 pandemic, like my business, which was, comedy production, stand-up school, um, kind of crumbled. And so I'd always kind of done diversity equity training, especially around trans people and how do we include and learn more for corporations and organizations. And then all of a sudden that was gone. And so I had a moment of crisis of faith, I guess you would say. Like, what do I believe? What am I here for if this is not it? And this is all I know and all I've been focused on for, the better part of a decade and a half at the time. And, who am I? And, I had this moment where I was like yelling at the universe, at God, whatever's up there. And I was like, F you, like, and say, and just like, I, I don't understand. I've done everything I thought I was supposed to do. And I've worked really, really hard and I've been singularly focused. Well, who am I? And I think the question that a lot of us get to is who are we, right? And who am I in this world and what am I meant for? And as I watched transphobia and the hatred coming from the right wing people that I was raised by, I thought, well, maybe now is the time I throw my hat in. My friend uh, John Smallwood asked me to run in 2013. I was like, "Ugh," you know, And I think it was really the Pulse nightclub shooting after the Pulse nightclub shooting and then the Club Q shooting on the heels of that that shook me and said, you're bettering yourself and you're here to help as many people as you can.
Mm.
And so she threw her hat in the ring and there and 23, it took a decade for me to actually listen to my friend and then I did it and I'm so grateful. I've learned so much not only about the world around me, how our cities and communities engage with each other, and um, how we participate in government. But I've learned more about myself, throughout the process.
Wow, that's a powerful statement. You know, you don't always think that when you think about people who are in politics, and we always have to remember
Yeah,
that everybody's a human being, and we have to put humanity first, even though there's so much work to be done. And I love that
yeah,
story. That's so powerful. I think we can complain about things, be upset about things all day long, and at some point we kind of have to get over that piece. All of us do in different stages of life, and ask ourselves the question, what am I going to do to be a part of the solution? And that, we're not all called to be in politics, but we can all do something. For some of us, it's just loving our families better. For some of us, it's,
yeah,
getting into politics, whatever it is. At some point, we have to kind of get over the mourning. Not get over it. That might be the wrong and insensitive way to say it, but we have to accept the space that we're in and ask the question how we can be the solution. And you've been a perfect example of what that looks like on a pretty a pretty huge level. Um, I'm really excited to talk to you also because when we think about politics, so here we are in Wisconsin and our organization's doing a ton of work on the midterms and everybody's focused on who's going to be our next governor. And really,
yeah.
what if, but, and that's important, don't get me wrong, but what's going to affect all of our lives more than who's governor are who our local representatives are, because um, that's who's making the decisions in our towns, in our cities, in our townships. And so share a little bit about the importance of local government as opposed to
Mm.
thinking about statewide or even nationally.
Well, gosh, I mean, local, your local representatives are the people that you have the most access to. The communication is transformative in our communities. Like, I've had people come up to me with ideas and I'll be like, "Ooh, I don't know if we can do that, but let's see what we can figure out." And we were able to accomplish the things that they need, and that's not always the case, but being able to finally see something tangible happen, like within the moment, is massive. And I think about one of the things I'm proudest of is removing credit score from subsidized housing applications that
Mm,
uh, for one of our divisions right now, but hopefully throughout the city soon. And I think as somebody who's experienced poverty, had bad credit score, experienced homelessness, removing credit score from a housing application, especially for people that are going through a huge process of seeking subsidized housing application or subsidized housing, it's transformative, right? Like
hmm
there are a whole group of people that would have gone through this whole long process and then at the last minute be denied because of their credit score. And people deserve housing. Like we have, as a society, have set up everything to be so difficult. And so when you have people who have lived experience of struggle, of poverty, of, you know, housing insecurity, you've got you've got people who can make a difference in ways that we never knew,
hmm
right? And like I said, I didn't get in this because I knew what I was doing. I've learned so much over the last 3 years, and there are things that the state prevents us from doing. So, but when you're engaged with your local politicians and you elect people that you care about and trust, they care about the community in ways that a lot of politicians couldn't, right? And your local elected officials are always also engaging with every other um, strata of government. Like, I've built relationships with people on the school board, the county board, um, other mayors around the state or around the just the area,
Hmm.
state legislators, people in the administration here in Wisconsin. And your local officials have their ear, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a huge
Did I
difference.
actually answer the question? Is
I
what I'm
was
like.
I was really impressed because, you started to answer it and then you talked about some really beautiful things that kind of went off into left field and then you brought it back like a true artist. You always bring it back around, right? It's
I
beautiful.
don't always.
So what are some of the, I mean, I know I could give you a list for myself, but what are some of the things that you see are really important as we start looking toward the future of, not only Madison, but the state of Wisconsin, even our country? What are some of the things? I know you mentioned, housing. That's obviously huge. I'm a parent of a couple of young adult children. One in particular is in that space of just, trying to figure out what that looks like, and I heard recently, and this blows my mind, that the average age of first-time home ownership in the United States is over 40 years old, which is unbelievable. And it just means, and that's not necessarily in Wisconsin, but you can feel that tension start moving in Wisconsin as well. And, so I've got this beautiful young married daughter who just had a baby who couldn't at this point even think about having her own house. And they're, it's a working family. They're doing their best. So that's one I
Yeah.
know. But what are some of the other things that we're concerned about?
Well, I mean, that's a big one,
Hmm.
right? We think about past generations who, when they graduate college or even high school, are able to get decent jobs and think, oh, in about 5 years, we'll put our first deposit down on a house. That doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-mm.
And, I think about our structures, the systems that have been created. And like since the 2007, recession, 2007, 2008 recession, they focus the powers that be focus specifically on high density rentals.
Hmm.
And so it's the wealthiest of the people who have stolen our future when it comes to housing attainability and just made it increasingly more difficult for people to get ahead. And that's not just in the housing market, but like how gross that the housing market is built on attaining as much wealth as possible. How gross that the healthcare market
Yes.
is held in private interests that seek to gouge everyone for more profit. Like, we have to return to each other.
Mm.
We have to remember who we are and who we are together, not just as individuals, but who we are together and what we value. And I'm going to bring it to faith again, but like I have been sitting a lot with the Cain and Abel story and God coming down and being like, "Hey, where's your brother?" And he's like, "What? Am I my brother's keeper? I just murdered him." Oh, but you know that, like, and so many of us are in that situation
Hmm.
right now, both metaphorically. and physically.
Hmm.
Like this current administration cut US aid, which saved up to 90 million people around the country, around the world. And over the last year, how many have we lost?
Right.
An estimated 90 million people of things that could have been prevented and had been being prevented.
Hmm.
And then it really is this moment where our leaders don't value humanity, they only value attainment of wealth. And I just keep trying to remind people who we are. Remember who you are. Remember who you're responsible for. And I believe profoundly that we're responsible for each other. I once again feel like I didn't answer your question, but
Oh, I think you answered it better than I could have ever dreamed. Because I think when you talk about humanity, and this is why faith is important, Dina, and this is why I think people of faith at this point, and whatever that faith may be,
right.
are so important right now. Because no matter what your faith tradition, humanity stands at the core of it, at the center of it, and my faith, as well as everybody else that I know that are people of faith, we don't have many conversations about attaining a bunch of wealth, but we have tons of conversations about people who are struggling or how we can help better, or whatever those types of humanity has to be at the core of everything that we do, and that has to also include our political arena in Wisconsin and our country. And like you said, these are at a certain level, it's people's lives that are at stake, and at a lesser level, it's people's well-being, and you wonder why we have mental health crisis in our world and in our country. It's because of what we're all dealing with a system that
Yeah.
doesn't serve us right. And I mean, the number of I'm a person that has lived a life in the nonprofit world, or I'm a musician and a public speaker, so I've done a lot of, I like you in the pandemic, it messed up my my career quite a bit because those live
Okay.
events just didn't exist. And so when my wife and I have endless conversations about how we're going to have health care. It feels like every year we have to have that conversation
Yeah.
again. And so it's not just people, and I'm a person who has, I'm almost 50 years old and have a career and all of that, and still I'm worried about healthcare. And so it's
Yeah.
not just young people, and it's not just people who are struggling in poverty. It's all of us, and we all have to take care of one another, and we all have to figure out who's around us, and what is it that we can do. So I really appreciate you bringing humanity at the center of this.
Mhm.
As we at Wisconsin Faith Voices, as we do a lot of our civic engagement work, I get a sense that people don't always know how even to reach out to their local representatives. So there's something that they care deeply about. They're in the midst of endless conversations with their own community, but then they don't know how to bring that to a person who could actually start some change on, at least to start on a local level, but even on a statewide level. So, walk us through how we do that. What would be a good process if somebody's just got something on their mind, they really feel passionate about it, but I don't know the first step of reaching out to my local representative.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are always websites with contact information. Um, Ours is City of Madison right now. I I know that every body has every legislative body or committee or commission has a website or a location you can email them. Email them. Now, a lot of us are not paid that well, and sometimes we don't have the capacity and miss things. And I will apologize profusely to everyone who I may not have responded to, but you can always, there are usually phone numbers that you can contact them through, as well as email, and be persistent. If it's something you believe in, circle back around and just see how you can do it. Schedule a meeting, with them. Sit down and have coffee. Um, and there's always that way. Your state offices are the same. Like everybody, there's always a way to get in touch with their offices. And once again, if you don't hear back because, things fall through the cracks sometimes, make sure that you're being persistent. Email several times if you can't get a response back. Um, yeah, I mean, and then when you see them, just say, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about this sometime and see if we can set up some time together." It's also do a little bit of research around how government works. If you
Mm,
are newer to the process, there are a lot of things we as alders can't do, and a lot of things that the state can do or county board can do. Make sure you know kind of what jurisdiction that would lie in, and maybe what your local alder or school board member or county board member pick their brain. Where do I go? Who do I talk to?
yeah, that's some really great advice. The doing a little research is not difficult for any of us
Yeah,
in the world of Google and other means. And so just figuring out, this is what I'm passionate about. Where do I go
yeah,
first? Is this a school
yeah,
board issue? Is this a local representative issue? Is it above that? Where are we and doing a little bit
yeah,
of research of how government works so that you're not frustrated as we're trying to get a message across and we're not getting the response that we want. Well, maybe we're reaching out to the wrong people. That could be
yeah,
a possibility. And please have grace for our politicians, especially our local politicians, because I know myself as a director of a nonprofit, I miss emails sometimes, and I feel horrible,
yeah,
right? And I don't want
yeah,
to do that. And then you take that to a representative level and imagine how many emails they're getting, and I think I get a lot of emails. And so just
oh
remember
God.
that we're all overwhelmed and we're all
Yeah,
human beings and we're all going to miss things and we're all going to make mistakes. And so that's why I like that persistence piece as well. Just
yeah,
just keep after it. If it matters enough to you, keep after it and don't give up.
yeah. And another thing, like, who's working on that in your neighborhoods? Who's
Mm,
working on something like that? Look around, talk to other people in the community. There are a lot of things that our constituents can do by working together with other people that are doing the same work.
yeah, yeah, I appreciate that. When you said that, I was thinking about, our immigration situation, specifically
Hmm.
in Dane County, which is where I've been really engaged and seeing how there's organizations that are so I've been in some meetings about kind of on an organizational level to talk about like mutual aid if there was a crisis situation, which
Yeah,
I believe there's always a crisis situation. But the beautiful part is that there's been neighborhoods doing the same thing, and I would argue that the power of those neighborhoods is way stronger than the power of some nonprofit leaders talking about it on a more
yeah,
on a larger level, because that neighborhood can make a immediate impact right away to people that are living right next door, and that's the power of humanity, and that's the power of people coming together. So, and you could look at that
yeah.
in a million different ways. I've got a friend that's in the medical world, and he just started finding ways to, or he was in the eye care world, and he just found ways to start giving away free glasses and giving people free eye
Oh,
exams and things like that. It's like,
beautiful.
what can we do, and what do we have power to do
Yeah,
that we don't always need, the next law to pass. But with that said, there's other things, and I know you and I both are really passionate about specifically our trans community, but our LGBTQ plus community as a whole, and these are things that we have some systemic issues that are deep and rooted, and as
yeah,
I find myself constantly fighting against Christian nationalism and specifically around this and so many other issues. So we're in a scary place. That's the only way I can think to say it, and we need to be doing the work to protect our LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters, and especially our trans friends and family members. What are some things? And again, this might, for those of us, for some people, for me, it's family. So there's never going to be a day out it doesn't matter to me, and there's never going to be a day I'm not talking about it and fighting for it. For other people, it might feel a little bit removed, but talk about the importance of fighting for the rights of everybody, and and the importance of the protection that's needed for in my mind right now. And
Mhm.
again, it's just because it's my son. In my mind, it gets really close, and I'm out. That's kind of the filter I'm seeing through. But feel free to
Yeah.
take that a little bit broader if you want to.
I mean, with people that you love that are, trans or queer, and, as queer people, we see all the bad stuff that's happening, right? Like that comes to our feed really quickly, like the fact that we're well into a transgender genocide in the United States, that
Mm,
a whole group of people in Kansas have had their IDs taken away from them, which disenfranchises them from participating in driving, the freedom of movement, the going to work, being able to vote. Like, if they don't get it changed, that's what happens, right?
yeah.
And then I think about like passport. Like, I spent a lot of time. I transitioned 20 almost 20 years ago, right? Like,
Hmm.
and if I apply for a passport, it's going to come back with the gender marker that makes me less safe.
Hmm.
And it's easy to get overwhelmed and stressed out and fall into a ball and not want to move. Like, I'm guilty of being that, feeling that way a
Of
lot.
course.
But also, like, things we can do are what you were talking about, mutual aid. How are we caring for our trans and uh, non-binary, gender diverse people? How are we caring for them? Like, are we able to house somebody if they lose housing? Are we able to employ somebody if they need employment? Are we able to chip in? You were just mentioning mutual aid. Like, how are you caring for those folks who are struggling right now? Was talking to several friends, and I've seen how their economic trajectory has been changed because of this. Like, people are less likely to hire us for things, scared to, especially if they're not really familiar with trans people. And we have essentially legalized discrimination everywhere, right? Like,
Absolutely.
um, so we have to think about, as communities, how are we caring for people, and who are we electing to represent us? Do they have the same values? Do they care about trans people, and will they fight for them? You know? Um, and I think about building those mutual aid networks, not only within our communities, but for extended communities. Like, how do we build that mutual aid network, build an emergency pile, build a gender affirming care stockpile, whatever. Like, it really is coming down to, we have to do things that don't look normal, because these are not normal times.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement.
And, like, if you don't know anyone who's trans or haven't been around trans people a lot, invite some people to bring their trans friends to your house and have a potluck, or, just like, how can we help? Just let them have fun. Joy is resistance too. And having a dance party, in your backyard with a bunch of trans folks and feeding them is a great way to step out of your comfort zone and build community.
Yes, I don't want anybody to miss that piece of joy being resistance. I've been hearing that
Yeah.
a lot recently, and it's really been moving to me personally because I don't often think that way, but it couldn't be
Yeah.
more true. And I love how you just keep bringing this back locally. Yes, we absolutely
Yeah.
need to know who we're voting for and if they represent what we believe in. And there's things that we can do. And I think about, when my kids were a little bit younger and a lot of their friends were dealing with families who weren't accepting, and so it felt like a very light lift
I'm
for
sorry.
us. Oh, that's all right. It felt like a very light lift for us, but we just created an open house for them. They're always welcome to be at our space, and they're always welcome to eat with us, to watch movie, like whatever. We just wanted to create a space where It felt like this is safe, this is normal, this doesn't have to, and it was a beautiful thing. And we needed help because, my wife and I needed help to create the safe that was the space that was safe. So we would ask our kids, can you, even for pronouns, can you give me a chart so that when your friends come over, I'm not missing pronouns, and we would work at it. And so there's things that you can do out of your own
Yeah.
house. And now I'm thinking about faith communities as well. And historically, faith communities have come against our queer friends and family members in such horrific ways. So how strong of a message does it share when there's a faith community that truly believes that that all humanity matters and that equity matters, and what Madison's a beautiful space where we see this so much,
Yeah.
yourself included. And so just don't forget that, yes, go to the polls and vote for the people who represent what you believe in, and always be thinking about what you can do personally and in your own community apart from politics.
Yeah.
All right, you gave me a
And
little. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, and to build on top of that, like thinking about how church spaces have done so much harm traditionally, how can we take our values and community and the congregation outside of the building?
Hmm.
Like for years, I didn't step, like I would say a good decade and a half, I didn't step foot in the church because I was like, nope, not interested, not interested at all. um, how do you bring that outside of the buildings? How do you bring that to the community? Because there are so many people who are not going to step foot in a building that need to be loved,
Hmm.
not proselytized, but loved and fed and need to laugh. So I think the challenge, especially for the church, especially for congregations that are affirming and welcome all the beloved queer children of God or the divine. I get a little woo. Um, we have to rethink what spaces of faith look like, and how are we going out of our pews, out of our comfort zone, and welcoming in people and showing that, like, from a specifically Christian standpoint, because that's how I grew up. uh, how are we showing the love of Christ, which is love your neighbor as yourself, right? How are we doing, enacting his commands to heal the sick, care for the homeless, you know, feed the hungry? Are we taking the gospel, not the gospel of salvation, but the gospel that where the rubber meets the road, where to bringing it to the people's needs? Are we caring about their needs and helping them feel human again? Like I think that's the one of the so one of the most shocking things for me is like my mom is so deceived by this right wing evangelical twisted theology that she can dehumanize me in the same voice she says she loves me. But we also know that love does not harm, love protects, right?
Mm.
Um, and I want to be like, oh my God. But like, how are we as congregations bringing community outside of our walls, bringing belonging outside of our walls, outside of our little congregation? And I think that's one of the challenges that the church overall and faith spaces overall are going to be required to ask, especially um, as our federal government seems to overreach into Christian nationalism that demands that I anecdotally, I heard a evangelical pastor who's pretty, I can't remember his name, but I know that he's pretty well known, say that they should have the government take over every church with a pride flag or a woman who's ordained in preaching. We have to think about how we build community outside of those traditional spaces, because if they get the like solidify their power, that's the reality we're going to face. And I know it sounds conspiratorial, but I know Christian nationalism. So, yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. I went on a big tirade.
That was good. That was good. I loved every moment of it. So thank you for your tirade. Okay, as we close up here, you gave me some time, and I really appreciate that. I could go on and on when we talk about faith communities, and one other thing I just want to add in there: if you are a part of a faith community where you feel it's not welcoming to queer folks, you have two options. You can leave that faith community, or you can try to do something from the inside and change that community. And I've seen both happen. And so don't just automatically assume that you should leave. I guess worst case scenario, you stay and do nothing. But in my mind, you should do one or the other. And I don't like to should on everybody, but it's getting to that point where I feel like that might be necessary. But don't be afraid. In the same way that we're talking about politics and our representatives are supposed to represent us, our pastor and clergy members are also supposed to represent us. And so don't be afraid to reach out to them and share with them if you feel like your community is not welcoming, even if they say they are. Sometimes they're not, and so don't be afraid to ask the deep questions and push your leadership a little bit. I think that's how we're going to become a better society and better faith communities as well. All right, I'm going to give you this is so probably cheesy and ridiculous, but we're coming up on the midterms. You're on the ballot. You're going for the 76th Assembly. Why should people put a mark next to your name when we get there?
Yeah, there are so many reasons why I think I'm the better candidate, and I don't think I'm the better anything most of the time.
Well, I do.
Right, thank you. My experience, lived experience of poverty and homelessness, and experiencing long-term struggle, not having insurance, like that gives me a different perspective that I have been able to bring not only to city government, but will be able to bring to the state government. And I fight really hard for working people, and I want to make sure that we are taken care of. So there are those things. Also, I I believe collaboration and community are the way through this. And so I've spent the last 5 years building relationships through every strata of government to be able to leverage those relationships. Uh, not, not that was not the purpose, but I'm looking forward to being able to leverage those relationships to get stuff done for working people. And as a trans woman, like, look, I wake up every day fueled by fury and caffeine.
Mhm.
And I'm ready to fight for what's right, fight for working people, fight to remind people of who they are. And I hope that that shows through in everything I do. And that's why I believe people should vote for me. And, you know, I hope I live up to your expectations, but I'm looking forward and ready to serving and making sure that people are taken care of, fighting for working people.
Well, Dina, Nina, thanks so much for joining me on the show. If you have any questions about how or when to vote, please reach out to us or go to our website at wifaithvoices.org. Definitely go to Dina's website, which is votedinanina.com, and make sure you learn about all of the great work that she's been doing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and this has been amazing.
Likewise, thank you so much for your time and inviting me.